Kristy Flannery of the Hockey Writers is joining me on today's show to provide me some insight on development camp and her overall thoughts on free agency so far for the New Jersey Devils. If we mention anything about Matthew Tkachuk, keep in mind we did this recording before he became a Florida Panther. So much to talk about. Can't wait to talk to Kristy. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, also Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, Trey Matthews. Joined alongside me is the wonderful credentialed writer for the Hockey Writers covering the New Jersey Devils. She's appeared on the show before, and now she's back to talk more. It's Kristy Flannery. Kristy, long time no hear, my friend.
Hi, thanks for that lovely introduction. That's great.
Thank you.
What a way to talk me up.
Great, because you've been to development camp, you've been inside the Prudential Center. I know has been going on around the Devils organization. But first and foremost, how you been doing?
I'm good. Last week, I felt like between the draft to like this week was like a really crazy, intense time. And now things are kind of starting to slow down a little bit. But yeah, it was a crazy week.
Okay, so what were your opinions on the Devils season? Like it didn't end too well, but considering the fact they had to deal with COVID first half of the year, dealt with a lot of injuries. Obviously, there were rumors swirling saying that Lindy Ruff was on the hot seat, and there was just a lot going on in the organization. But what can you say, based on your opinion alone, how you felt the season went for the Devils?
Okay, so my opinion is this. I think it was really hard for Tom Fitzgerald to sit at the end of this season and gauge what this team was and what he needs to do this summer, because I don't think anyone can properly gauge the roster that he put on the ice last October, because there were so many injuries, because of the goaltending carousel. Nothing went right for the team. So I think to try and go from there and see, okay, what plugs do I need to fill? Like, where do I need to go with this team? I don't think it was an easy task to do. With that being said, I think Fitzgerald's doing a really good job this summer. I think the Devils are doing exactly what they need to do. But it was an unfortunate season. It was, it was really tough, injuries, and, you don't have good goaltending or consistent goaltending. I mean, what are you going to do at that point? There's nothing that can be done. And it was a tough situation, I think, for the goaltenders. I think from a fan's perspective, it's really easy to be like, they all sucked, like they were all terrible. And it's like, look at this situation that they were all thrown into. Like, you have Schmid and Dawes, who were supposed to be in the AHL, who were playing in a completely different league than what they were supposed to be doing, trying their best. And as far as Hammond and Gilly, like, they were kind of tossed into a really tough situation of like, hey, the team's drowning, and now we're putting you in the hot spot to try and be like the miracle magic man that's going to like keep this ship afloat. So it was just really difficult all the way around.
I would have to agree with you in that regards, because it's just like, I'd say Nico Dawes was arguably our best goalie, but from a casual fan, they're going to be like, oh, Nico Dawes didn't do anything. He wasn't all that good. But I'm just like, look at the facts here. Nico Dawes was thrown into the fire. I constantly say that. He had no business being in that position. And at one point, we were using him for 10 games in a row, not because we're trying to overwork the kid, but at the same time, it's just like, we had no choice, because it was him, Akira Schmid, or Hammond, and Hammond was a complete disaster. But you're absolutely right about that. And we actually had to use an emergency backup goalie at one point too. Kyle Shapiro, who's appeared on my show as well. So it's just like, the goalie situation just wasn't good when we lost Mackenzie Blackwood, lost Jonathan Bernier. We were just, put behind the 8 ball, and we could never just climb out of that deep hole. And that was so unfortunate.
And I think looking back, I think it really hurt us that when we did have Blackwood and Bernier healthy for that short amount of time, it forced the team to put Wedgwood on waivers.
Yeah,
obviously Wedgwood would have been the one that you would have kind of liked to see and kind of try to keep the ship afloat, but it all happened. The timing wasn't right. The timing wasn't good for anybody. And it was an unfortunate situation. It was a really difficult situation. I wouldn't have wanted to been one of those goaltenders that was expected to kind of just, save the team and be taught, like you said, kind of tossed into the fire a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, no one will blame you. Like, I'm not trying to say like, I'm not trying to say like, being a goalie is easy. It's not. But at the same time, it's just like, I think we expected a little bit better. I think our season could have been a lot better had we had decent goaltending, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that.
So that's my overall stance with the whole goalie situation, which is, you're absolutely right, which is goalies weren't that good, but at the same time, they weren't really put into a favorable position. Now, this leads into sort of my question. What are your expectations for the goalies going into this season? Because obviously we got Vitek Vanacek signed to a 3-year deal. Mackenzie Blackwood is supposedly healthy. And now Jonathan Bernier, a coin flip at this point, but I wouldn't mind if Nico Dawes is our third string goalie. Do you think we're set to at least play meaningful games? Because the main question that I think every Devils fan wants to know at this point is, can the Devils play meaningful games come late in the season?
I do. I mean, listen, I wasn't really thrilled with when you look at the long-term goaltending situation in New Jersey, when you looked at who was available this summer, I don't know if any of them necessarily would have been a long-term fit for New Jersey. I think they went a good route where, Blackwood, I think, is up at the end of this season. And then we have obviously the other one signed for 3 years. We don't know what's going on with Bernier. It sounds like he's not going to be ready for training camp. I've seen online, people are thinking like long-term injured reserve. That is, to be seen at this point in time. But I think right now going a 1A, 1B is really smart. I'm not a big fan of the 1A, 1B scenario, but I think for the Devils it works because we have Mackenzie Blackwood, who is probably out on a mission. He was injured. He didn't really have the numbers probably that he wanted. So we have him that's extremely motivated. And now we put another youngster who I think is only a year older or younger than him in competition for that number one. And I think that's really smart because it's going to push both of them. And I think we already tried with Blackwood to bring in the veteran goaltender. We tried twice to bring in the veteran that's going to really help shape him and mold him. And even Hammond came in as like the veteran that was going to try and kind of keep everything going. And that plan didn't work. So I'm not opposed to trying a 1A, 1B where they really have to push themselves to see whose net it's going to be.
I want to bring you guys the first and second live read this morning, and the first one comes from our friends at Built Bar. So, from the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift for your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given Coconut Brownie Chunk the puff treatment. That's right, the Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar flavors you love in a delicious, chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. But stop drooling and listen. They are good for you, low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and all delicious. Coconut Brownie Chunk Puffs are only here for a limited time, so don't miss out. They are going like hotcakes because they taste amazing. All Built Bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. The best part about Built Puffs, of course, is that they taste amazing, but you can enjoy them guilt-free because they are actually good for you. They are the perfect treat, perfect when you've got a craving, you need to satisfy your sweet tooth, or if you need a quick, healthy snack, and they are an excellent source of protein. Delicious coconut, rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing. Get to Built.com and order your box of Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Puffs right now. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 50% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And now the second live read comes from our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, NASCAR, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sport wagering information, from live in-game betting, sources, and podcasts. That they have everything you possibly can want. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the actions happening right now. BetOnline, where the game starts. Please remember to gamble responsibly and visit our friends at Locked On Bets for all your betting needs there as well.
If you had to make a prediction, Vitek Vanacek put up solid numbers for Washington Capitals. Mackenzie Blackwood, like you said, is on a mission, but he might have one foot out the door. We don't know because he did fire his agent mid-season, which is never a good sign. And he has expressed his frustrations towards the organization, but I think they're trying to give him a position to win because unfortunately his career is on the same trajectory as someone like Corey Schneider, which is injured a lot. We have to rely on him too much. Doesn't really have a suitable backup. We're trying to keep him away from that sort of avenue. But if you had to make a prediction, who's going to play the most games in net for New Jersey?
That's really tough to say in July. The only thing that is kind of intriguing to me is you have one goaltender who's out to kind of prove himself, who's on an expiring contract. You have another goaltender who came off of a pretty good season and now is secured with a 3-year contract. So you don't know the mentality of someone who needs a new contract, who has to play for that contract. I think that is something that should be put into consideration a little bit. I honestly think it's going to be whoever performs more like consistently, to be honest. I don't think you can really say at this point who's going to be who. You would kind of lean towards Blackwood, but if he underperforms or, it's anyone's net. I think it was Herb Brooks. It's like, it's anybody's net at that point. When you're letting in that many goals, it could be anybody. So I think that's really a hard thing to answer at this point.
Okay. So
I didn't answer.
I couldn't answer it either, quite honestly, because I'm just like, you're just going to have to see what happens during camp. You're just going to have to see what happens during preseason. I get it. But if I had to, put my money where my mouth is, I would say Mackenzie Blackwood. That just because he's been with the organization the longest, Vitek Vanacek is still relatively young. Yes, he's put up solid numbers for the Washington Capitals, but is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? Because here's the thing. Out in front of him is not the Washington Capitals, not a veteran-led team with a once-in-a-generation type player. We are a up-and-coming team who could possibly sneak into the wild card position if all goes well. But, we're still a far cry from the Washington Capitals, who are one of the oldest teams in the NHL and have all those veterans. So the difference is night and day between, the Capitals and the Devils. But digressing a little bit, let's talk going into the offseason. What were your thoughts going into this offseason period for the New Jersey Devils? Because there were high expectations. I said Johnny Hockey was on the way, and then he stuns the hockey community by going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Still haven't forgiven him for that. And now this whole Matthew Tkachuk saga is just getting more interesting, but highly doubt he goes to New Jersey. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but at the same time, the Devils had a lot of cap space. They had the second overall pick in the draft. There were a lot of rumors saying like they're going to trade it away. They're going to hold on to it. They're going to try to, maybe get Alex DeBrincat or Kevin Fiala. They're going to try to get this top-notch player. What were your thoughts going into the offseason?
My thoughts were, again, you don't really know what the team that was on the ice last year was able to do. So I didn't expect there to be too many major changes and shakeups to the roster. But then again, you don't know, like day to day, things can happen in the NHL, especially in the summer, So for me, I thought that they were going to replace the assistants, which they did. That I thought was going to be pretty quick, which, ended up happening. For me, I'm like, when I look at what the Devils needed, they needed to kind of increase the blue line a little bit. You had Siegenthaler, who had a great season. Nobody really expected that from him. Hamilton got injured, so you didn't really see the true Dougie Hamilton. Graves came in. The blue liner is it's a lot bigger now. For me, I wanted them to focus on their bottom six, on the depth. And I think when you watch the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Colorado Avalanche in the Stanley Cup final, you realize how important that depth is. Those Blake Colemans, those Pat Maroons, those Corey Perrys, like they all serve a purpose. And I think that for the Devils, and even like you mentioning Johnny Gaudreau, Johnny Gaudreau, listen, him, Alex DeBrincat, they're going to immediately improve a team's top six. There's no question about that. You have one who was the second highest scorer in the league behind Connor McDavid. The other one's a 2-time, 40 goal scorer, but that doesn't help the depth. And I think for New Jersey, a lot of fans said to me, the team relied too much on Hischier, Hughes, and Bratt. And I'm like,
I said the exact same thing. Same thing. We relied too much on our baby big three.
Right. But I said at the same time, if you added Johnny Gaudreau and Alex DeBrincat, the winger is going to probably most likely be with Hughes. That's what people are they want a winger to go with Jack Hughes. So I'm like, that's putting more pressure on your top 3, top 4 forwards, which doesn't help your bottom 6. And even if you move like Sharon Govich down, which to me, Sharon Govich plays his best hockey when he's on a line with Jack Hughes. So I would always keep Sharon Govich with Jack Hughes. If you want the best out of him, you put him with Jack Hughes. We saw it last season. We saw it the season before that. He does not perform as well if that's not his player, but he also isn't that kind of role player either. You can't just knock people down and expect them to kind of be that Corey Perry that you need. So for me, I was like, you need an elite winger, not necessarily an expensive superstar, but you need a winger. Palat kind of falls into that category. And you need more sandpaper. You need you need something in your bottom 6. So I know we're going to get into this, but Erik Haula loved the move, because even though he's not a big guy, he's fearless. And that's what the team needs.
Have you been listening to my show? Because you said everything that I've been saying, which is get a winger.
Great minds, man. Great minds.
Get a winger. Get more forward depth, because I felt as though outside of Bratt, Hughes, and Heischer, the Devils weren't really necessarily getting that.
No.
So I was just like, okay, get more depth in that regards.
Yes.
And then, try to improve the defense just a little bit, but I felt as though it, that's a little easier to do. And obviously get a backup goalie, something to help in that regards.
Yes.
So have you been listening to my show?
I was taking notes on all your previous episodes. I'm like, what can I say? But no, I mean, that's kind of reality though. I mean, even like looking at Matthew Tkachuk, right? You have Tkachuk and you have Johnny Gaudreau. If I'm putting money out, and again, these players, they want a lot of money. They want a lot of term. For Johnny Gaudreau to not be really 100% keen on New Jersey, that's a lot for an organization to give up to bring him in for that long. And if I could just go on one rant for 1 second, the thing that drives me insane is that everyone was up in arms when JT Miller was linked to the New Jersey Devils. They said, he's too old. We don't want him. JT Miller and Johnny Gaudreau are starting the 2022-23 season the exact same age. Exact same age. I just want to make that point because I don't think people understand it, because they were ready to give 7 years to Johnny Gaudreau, but 4 to 5 years for JT Miller. He's too old. We're not going to give him 4 years, but Gaudreau gets 7. That to me made no sense whatsoever. And Tkachuk is a different kind of player. He kind of falls into, for my mind, a Miller category because he has that sandpaper. He is that physical elite winger that you need. He's not just a small, speedy guy. And let's be honest, the way that his style of play is, he probably opened the ice for Johnny Gaudreau. I'm curious, like Johnny Gaudreau on a line with Tkachuk might not be the Johnny Gaudreau on a line with Jesper Bratt and Jack Hughes, a line of all 5'10" speedy forwards. That could be a completely, there's certain players that bring out the best in other players. And Tkachuk is where I would put my money. If I was a GM and you gave me DeBrincat, Gaudreau, and Tkachuk, I'm going Tkachuk all day, every day.
Why am I even here? Let Kristy host the show. Let Kristy host the show.
Sorry. I haven't done a Devils podcast in so long. I apparently have a lot of things to say. I'm so sorry.
No. I love it. Keep going. Just a little joke. So Devils fans, if you weren't willing to give JT Miller a contract, leave a comment down below as to why you were so willing to do it with Johnny Gaudreau. If you're watching on YouTube, curious to hear your guys' thoughts in that regards, because Kristy does bring up a very compelling argument, and it's something I've brought up in my show before. Johnny Gaudreau in his late 20s, but the mentality I have for Johnny Gaudreau is that strike while the iron is hot. And, just like he had 100+ points last season, one of the hottest wingers in the league. He and Tkachuk, that two-headed monster out in Calgary. So I was just basically bring one of those guys here. Now, it's going to be very unlikely that we get Matthew Tkachuk, and by the time this episode goes live, he'll probably already be dealt away to St. Louis. But, obviously you are right in that regards, which is, obviously Johnny Gaudreau up there in age a little bit, late 20s. And, this was pretty much going to be most likely his last big contract, because by the time his term is up, he's going to be, approaching his late 30s. So that was his last contract. So I think he had to consider everything to the minuscule detail, everything very meticulously.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what we actually did get. Andre Palat, Eric Haula, Brendan Smith. We talked about Vitek Vanacek. Let's talk about some of the Devils that are officially going to be wearing the red, black, and white.
Which one do you want to go with first?
Well, you're big on Eric Haula, so let's start right there.
I think that he immediately helps out the bottom six. I think for Pavel Zacha, and we talked about this before we hit the record button, he needed a change of scenery. I'm so happy that he's finally going to get it. And I'm honestly not going to be surprised if he has a breakout season in Boston. I'm really not. He's not a bad player. He was plagued by his draft selection. And that's not really the player's fault. The player doesn't know where they're going to be selected. That's, the scouts and everyone else that gets paid to kind of make those decisions. So I'm really happy for him. And you know what? Eric Haula, I think he's 5'11", so he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he plays a fearless game. He hits, and the thing with him that I think is going to be the most intriguing storyline is that historically he plays his best hockey when he has consistent line mates, when he can build that chemistry. And you saw it in Boston from October to January. It was kind of a little bit, scattered. But then once he found that line, he had a phenomenal second half of the season. And for a team that had so many injuries last year, that had so many different line changes and everything like that, I'm curious how he's going to do in New Jersey if Lindy Ruff keeps kind of rotating in and out, because we have a lot of players that can go on that third line with him. We have Andreas Janssen, don't know yet if he's going to be traded. We have Thomas Tatar. We have Nolan Foote. We have Fabian Zetterlund. There's a lot of options. We have Miles Woods
that are going to be traded.
Yeah, we have a lot of options for that third line, because you would think at this point, everyone's saying, that Miles Woods back, the fourth line is going to be, the BMW line is going to be reunited. We're going to have Bastian, McLeod, and Wood. Well, that's not set in stone.
I just want to address this real quick, and this is going to be real quick, and I don't want to touch on it any further. Mikey McLeod under a little scrutiny right now based on what's been going on with the Team Canada investigation. Hoping for the best, but just want to address that, want to address the elephant in the room. Didn't really want to touch on my show, but just wanted to put that out there. Mikey McLeod is in hot water right now. Nothing's confirmed or denied, but just putting that out there. So the BMW line might not be reunited in that regards, but didn't mean to interrupt you, Kristy.
No, it's fine. And we also have Tyce Thompson. So I think for me, the most intriguing factor with Erik Haula is who are his line mates going to be in New Jersey? Can he find that consistency? Will Ruff allow him to have that consistency? Or is it going to be rotating in and out until they find the best fit? But other than that, really big fan. He's a veteran, and this team desperately needed veteran leadership. And as no disrespect to Nico Hischier, I think he's a phenomenal captain. I love, every time he comes into the room, he takes accountability. He's a guy that wants to win. But there's nothing that can replace a veteran that's been around and knows what it takes to win and knows that mentality, which could actually be a really great segue into Palat.
I said this before, no disrespect to Nico Hischier, no disrespect to Jack Hughes, no disrespect to Jesper Bratt, arguably our three best players, but who's the leader, out there? Like, who's the one saying, hey, that's not your help right there. Hey, I need you to shoot the puck from this part of the zone. Get back on defense. You have to stop this guy, things of that nature, or who's rallying the troops or things of that nature. And like you said, it could be Erik Haula, it could be Andre Palat, it could be a lot of those guys who, and now the New Jersey Devils are no longer the youngest team in the NHL. Actually, they've jumped from last position to now like in the mid-20s or something like that. So still one of the youngest teams in the NHL, but no longer the youngest. So just wanted to put that out there. So let's talk about Andre Palat. I guess this leads to my next subject, and I agree with you on Pavel Zacha. I would not be surprised if he has a breakout year in Boston, just because so many untapped potential, still relatively young. I don't think he's a lost cause. I just think that he hit a wall with New Jersey, and there was just no climbing out of it. But now let's go to Andre Palat, who was our big free agent signing, our plan B for the whole Johnny Gaudreau fiasco.
You can't replace or try to replicate somebody who went to 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals, winning 2 of them. He has so much that he can provide this team off the ice. And what I really love about him is I did a lot of research when they first came in, because when you think of the Tampa Bay Lightning championship team, he might not be the first couple names that come to your mind. And the one thing that they said about him is they said he might be the most underrated Tampa Bay Lightning. Like when you look back, he might be one of the best to ever wear the jersey. And I just love that, because you don't need to be a superstar. And that just shows how much he does right. And it's all the small things that he does right. It might not be the flashy player on the team. You might not have Trevor Zegras' moves, but to have somebody who can do the little things right is so important. And being able to teach such a young team those things, it's invaluable. Like it's a great move by them to bring him in on just so many levels. And he does have that sandpaper, kind of like Erik Haula. Like that's what you need for this team. You can't have 12 Jack Hugheses are not going to win you a Stanley Cup. You need a complete roster. And that's what Fitzgerald's doing. And that's why I love the moves that he's making. It's like Herb Brooks said, you don't need the best players. You need the right players. And when Joe Sakic was talking about Colorado, he goes, we had superstars. He's like, even when we were bad, he goes, they were just developing into what they are now. He goes, it was my job to build around them. And I feel like that can easily be described as the New Jersey Devils. You have, for the first time in years, you have a core. You have Heischer, you have Hughes, you have Bratt, you have a lot of young defensemen that are really exciting coming into the mix. You have your pieces. Build around them, which is why I was of the opinion you don't need a Johnny Gaudreau. I'm not saying he wouldn't help the team. He obviously would, but you don't need him. You have your core. It's not the days where you're trying to attract that player. You have them. Build around them. You don't need more superstars. You don't want to end up like the Toronto Maple Leafs where you have all your money and 4 players and now you're struggling to build around them, because Toronto's problem has always been depth. Even Edmonton has a line that has Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, 2 of the best players, and that's not enough to get them to the Stanley Cup final. The Eric Hollas, the players that like the Nick Pauls, those are the players that are so important, and I'm glad that Fitzgerald is starting to see that.
Glad I agree with you. Like, you know, I feel as though it's been an underrated off season for New Jersey Devils, just because I know the expectation was Johnny Gaudreau, Alex DeBrincat, Kevin Fiala, all that, and I'd be lying if I said I was not disappointed that we didn't get Johnny Gaudreau, because one of my episodes was literally me pouting and just me, you know, being kind of bitter kind of thing. But digressing a little bit. So let's talk about the defense now. Brendan Smith and then John Marino. So who do you like? And this kind of bumps PK Subban of any chance of him returning, because now, you know, we've gotten some replacements and seems like his time in New Jersey Devils is now officially closed, but I still think they should give him another chance, but that's just me. Brendan Smith and John Marino, initial thoughts.
When we had the media availability with Brendan Smith, I instantly loved him, and I said fans are going to just love him. And the thing that I liked about him is, again, he has the veteran presence for the blue line. Not that our blue line is exceptionally young at this point in time, but he knows his role. And I think that's so important for a player that might be, like he said, he's like, I'm a 5, 6, 7th defenseman. He's like, but when you need me in there, like I know my job. I know what my role is. I know what I'm doing. And for me, it's so refreshing to hear that, especially like you're not trying to play better. Like, you know what you are. And for him to even say, you know, I think it was when Wilson went after Panarin and all of that chaos ensued. I'm pretty sure it was Smith who actually went after Wilson. And he said during his media availability, he was like, look, I'm not going out there to try and find a fight. Like, that's not how it works. He goes, but if I have to defend my teammate and it just organically happens, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what this team needs. Because again, all their stars are smaller guys. So you do need that person like that Subban. Like Subban went in, defended Jack Hughes. You do need that on the team. So I really like Smith. I don't know how many games he's going to get in. I'm not sure how everything's going to shake out, because again, you have the veterans that are bringing in. You have John Marino, who's not a veteran. He's, 25, I believe. But you also have in the wings, Ball, Nikita Okahoy, Riley Walsh. So you're kind of wondering how this defense is going to shape up, or if those 3, at this point, AHL players are going to be trade bait at some point in time. Because you locked in Marino for, he's in for a few years. So you're wondering kind of how that whole thing is going to shape up, or if you're content just kind of letting them further develop in the AHL because they're still so young. So I'm interested to see how that whole thing is going to shape out now that we know Ty Smith is obviously not part of the equation anymore. And for John Marino, I'm going to be honest, I wasn't as familiar with him.
I don't think anyone really was.
Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like I always said that about Colton White. Like I'm like, you don't hear necessarily like outstanding things. You don't hear like he's Cale Makar, but you also don't hear bad things either. And I think for a defenseman, when you're in that kind of realm where it's just, for me, it's like you're doing your job. You're not doing anything on either end of the spectrum, but you're doing enough that you're a steady, reliable defenseman, and that's perfectly fine in my book.
So what would you rate this offseason for New Jersey Devils? Like if you had to give it a grade, because obviously things could still happen. They still, like you said, have a lot of prospects they could trade away. They own their first round draft pick in next year's, or I guess this upcoming year's NHL draft, since the draft happened a few weeks ago. How would you rate this offseason for Devils so far?
You know what? I'm going to do a solid B. And the reason I'm going to leave it at that is because the Devils have, I think, $9.6 million left in cap space, and they still have to sign Bratt, Wood, Tice Thompson, Zetterland. I think I'm missing somebody else. So I feel like there's going to be another move, at least one more, to just kind of, because we have an abundance of players. Like I said, we have so many players, and there's only so many roster spots. So I do think there is going to be something else in the wings. It's not like an inside scoop. It's just my personal opinion. But I think it's a solid B. I think he's doing a great job. I think he's checking off, like I said, he's checking off the right boxes that his organization needs, which is more important to me than just going out and getting the best player available.
All right. So final topic. You've been to development camp. You've been inside the Prudential Center. Can you give us your best insight as to what you've been seeing and what you've been leaving the Prudential Center like feeling after you witnessed development camp, wherever the case might be?
I feel like for the first time in a long time, the Devils have prospects that fans can be really excited about. I feel like we went through a lull where there wasn't, the prospects weren't really working out the way that we hoped. And it was really kind of a bit depressing for fans to know that there was nothing in the works to kind of come in and replace everybody, especially when, Lou was here and the team it was an aging roster and you didn't really have any young standouts. And I think Devils fans have a lot to be excited about as far as what who these prospects are and what they're doing. I said before we recorded, Tyce Thompson to me is a name to watch. I know he was injured last year, so we didn't really see him, but I thought he was really impressive when he was on the ice. So I'm really interested to see what he can do healthy. I'm excited for him to go to training camp. And I'm also intrigued by Alexander Holtz, because I think to me, the black cloud that followed Pavel Zacha, I think slowly is going to transition to Alexander Holtz, because he was, I think, the 7th overall pick. And I know last year I had a lot of fans message me and they were like, he's in the NHL. He looks lost. He's not good. He's a bust. And I'm like, first off, he's very, very young. I'm not going to call him a child.
We didn't give him a chance.
Very, very young.
We didn't give him a chance. That was a problem. And he dominated in the NHL.
Right. And I said, the AHL and the NHL are obviously two very different leagues. And I said, you can't just close the curtain and just say, okay, he's done. Because obviously when you see, other writers talk about, potential targets for other teams, Alexander Holtz is always a name that comes up. So I think Holtz is going to be a very interesting player to watch. And I'm curious how he's going to come to training camp, if he's going to be ready to go or not. Because to be honest, in my opinion, out of all the AHL forwards that came up last season, if there was one that if you told me on the last day of the regular season, you need to bet on this player to make the roster out of training camp, my opinion would be Fabian Zetterlund.
Just plugging my sponsor real quick. Go to betonline.net to place your bet for the New Jersey Devils, whatever the case might be. If you play some money for them to win the Stanley Cup Finals, I think you'll be a millionaire. So just putting that out. Do not do it, though. Please don't do it. Just a little joke. So, Kristy, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this discussion. Talked all things Devils, talked about the offseason, talked about this past season, talked about the new additions, and basically talked about your experience at the Prudential Center. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to do so.
Thank you so much. And if you are going to leave a comment, all I ask is please be respectful. I have no problem with people going, having a different opinion. I'm like, just please be nice about it.
Oh, don't worry, Kristy. If there's a disrespectful comment, I'll just delete it. And it's
just please be nice. That's all I ask. I love different opinions. It's my favorite. I love having those conversations. And I've been very lucky that Devils fans have been very nice to me for the past year and a half.
Embrace debate, but don't embrace hate, everyone. Be respectful. Everyone has different things, and she knows what she's doing. All right. Thank you, Kristy.
Thank you.